And then just how you've experienced soil degradation, and just you could take this wherever you wanted, but just
they got it.
Oh, are you starting with it? Oh,
Yeah.
okay, I didn't know that. Okay, so can you give an example of what you're gonna do? While she's talking, she's unwinding that.
That would be yapping.
So it's nice to kind of do something with your hands as you're talking.
Yeah, you ready?
And then she's next speaker, and then the connection stays. And that's gonna happen as we move from 2. So basically, start with 2, and then any of these other prompts, whatever you wanna dive into. And somewhere between 3 and 5 minutes.
Each speaker?
Yeah,
Okay.
So
So
I'll
we're
be a
talking
time.
this, and then we're going, I
Then-
say that, and then I
Then you
continue
go
with my
with,
prompts
yeah,
that I
then
chose.
go with
Okay.
wherever you wanna go.
Okay.
And you don't even have to choose a prompt from the list. You could take something from the framing and just, it's whatever has meaning for you. And it's part of your story. But then when Janet does that,
I'll talk to you.
she's gonna decide who to go to, or you could raise your hand, because you might have something in mind that goes perfectly with whatever Janet said. So if that's the case, let someone know you're ready. Otherwise, it'll just be Janet's decision.
And this, if I do that, that's just a check to go wrap it up.
Okay.
And we have Jane in charge of this because I suck at it. I'm no good at that, but she excels at it. She's an awesome time manager. And then we'll basically, the goal is for it to be a conversation and for people to be just listening to us have a conversation that's spoken from heart and connected to soil. And then I guess we haven't really figured out how we're gonna, I mean, at the end, if we want to make sure everyone has spoken, we'll know who hasn't spoken yet because they won't be holding the yarn. So at the end, if there's a way that we can, that last question, how do we imagine collaboration across diverse perspectives can be helpful here, and how can that help serve to catalyze regenerative practices? And then we'll close. And I'm gonna put Jane in charge of wrapping and closing. Do that before
After the duet?
or before the duet to close the prompt.
Okay, and that would be, yeah.
If anyone, you could have 1 or 2 people speak to this.
I feel like we need to do that, but I think we can time. Because we just need to make sure we have at least 5 minutes left, so that would mean at 7:50. 7:55, and then we have it finally 5 minutes. Okay.
I don't know. What I was going to say was, so I can do it all here.
Questions for us. I know it says optional. I was gonna say, I mean, everyone like that.
Good.
do also have dance instructor, so.
So it's gonna be,
Or maybe we do it here, because like when we interview like
You can use the mic if you want. They should all be centered around your feet. Don't have to touch them all, really just look in your face. Otherwise, if you feel like projecting, we have ceiling mics to pick up everything for the street. Mics are live. You don't need to touch them. If you want to project, cool. If you want to use mic, cool.
so then it picks up,
Please don't hit it.
sorry, I was just tapping.
They are on, I have them muted. You don't need to hit them.
When they lay down, it will go.
I've already taken care of it.
Okay.
They're all muted.
Oh,
Tell me what you're correct.
So what it's like,
Great.
I haven't, when you're doing all these,
Yep, this is, I have.
This could be a little challenging. Yeah.
so we want to see how this is.
I might get sidetracked or start. And then when you're done,
Yeah, so if someone,
I'll figure it out.
if someone beside you is struggling to manage the one in the mic, help them. And, I mean, what Kathy shared is that we really think it's important that people have mics so that also for the mics. So that so let's, we've got 1, 2, 3, yes and no. 4, 5, 6. There's about 1 for every 2 people.
it doesn't have it. And then of course it doesn't have it.
Right, because, yeah.
Just now when I got back
So he's at, we'll get
and once with glasses, like I said, very nice. But I didn't know what it is. It tells me how to set it up. But it doesn't sound like it. How does it work? What do I do? No, listen, hold on. There are no manuals to I can't remember.
evening.
Yes, it is.
I am Kathy Reed, Director of the Paideia program, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to our Paideia Text and Issues presentation this evening. This is our last presentation of the year. It will last about 50 to 55 minutes, and then there will be a chance for questions after that, to talk with the participants, and then there'll be a second stage of conversation that will take place in a reception following in the Hawley lounge. So please join us for that as well with some refreshments. The theme of this year's series has been Uncommon Research for the Common Good, a collaboration between professors in biology and movement fundamentals alongside farmers, dancers, a Qigong practitioner and herbalist, student researchers in environmental studies and global health, and community public policy makers. That makes for some uncommon research of the highest order. Let me introduce the two faculty members behind this collaboration and then let them introduce their collaborators as they go along. Jodi Enos-Berlage, professor of biology, specializes in water quality and soil microbes. However, she goes way beyond that in leading a major project on regenerating soil and community in Northeast Iowa and working in the intersections of education and innovation of the academy and the community as she works for positive change. Jane Hawley, dance professor, has taught all of us at Luther College and in the larger world to think about the human body as a text. As she says, a primary source for the integration of body, mind, and spirit. Her original movement fundamentals curriculum is a model of transdisciplinary collaboration. Please join me in welcoming Jane and Jodi and their collaborators.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming tonight, and thank you so much, all the participants that so generously said yes. We're going to start tonight with me doing some framing for the group, and then we'll do introductions and lead into conversation. So this actually came from one of our participants, and they said, "What is this? Can you tell me what you want the audience to leave with?" Like, that's a good idea. We're going to start at the end. So this is the framing and providing a lot of the motivation for all of us here. So our soil is in real trouble, locally, regionally, and globally. And so we're losing it at 10 to 1,000 times the rate that it is formed. And it is considered, as I heard from a farmer last week, the #1 agricultural export of Iowa. We have major impacts happening for human and non-human life in terms of food, health, water, and climate that is tied to soil degradation. This awareness needs to spread beyond farmers, beyond conservation professionals, and scientists. And the primary cause is that we do not have a reciprocal relationship with the soil. So for 150 years, we have taken more than we've given, and that has had consequences. And this has been primarily through unsustainable agricultural practices. So degraded soil requires more chemical inputs, which further degrades soil. So this creates a vicious cycle that increases dependencies and depletes farmers' pocketbooks. And I really want to emphasize at the front end here, there's no blame coming. We have, this system is what we have learned, taught, and incentivized. But now we know better. We are beginning to know better. And we don't have much time left. So topsoil depletion is expected not within hundreds of years, but within decades. And saving, so the other thing to emphasize, unlike so many problems in the world, we know how to fix this one. It is a known. And so saving our literal common ground becomes an enormous opportunity, because by healing our earth, we also heal ourselves. So I'm involved in this effort, and I think others are here, because it feels good to be a part of this. Regenerating soil can regenerate community. That's what we named the grant. It transcends age, gender, ethnicity, geography, politics, religion, arts, sciences, humans, non-humans. We all need food and water. And so as someone who studied for 15 years water quality, in the last year or so, this epiphany just came to me, like I'm sure others have had this. Water quality and too much water quantity, it's just a symptom of degraded soil. It's just the symptom. And so then this idea came to, if we center our attention on soil, the rest will come automatically. So win, win, win for water quality, for food, for decreased unwanted water quantity, for droughts, for climate. And so I also want to share that the regenerative agricultural revolution is already happening, and it's happening in Iowa, it's happening in Northeast Iowa. We've met these farmers. So we don't need to start it. All we need to do is catalyze it. And so that's the key, to care for the life in the soil, because it's in need of urgent care. Science is required. I come from a science perspective, and it is absolutely insufficient. Arts play a vital role. Humans are emotional beings. We don't make decisions based on logic or data or PowerPoints. We make them based on our hearts and our minds and how we feel. So the arts offer this connection, and this is tied to my collaborations with Jane Hawley, and hence this uncommon ensemble and research towards our common good. So that's the framing, and I'm going to hand this over to Jane. Oh, she's got a mic.
Thank you, Jodi. We are actually centering soil that her husband, John, has been taking care of for 10 years. Okay. And maybe Jodi will talk more about that. So I'm Jane. We are creating space in a different way for all of us to be included in this circle. We're really grateful for your attendance and for your participation. And my connection to soil started as an emotional space. I grew up on a farm, and about a mile was a dirt road. And that's where I went when I was angry, when I was thinking about romance, when I was really excited and needed to be alone, or just contemplative. But I started to dance on a dirt road.
Thank you, Jane. My name is Sophia Campbell. I moved to Decorah for work, and now I work with the Soil and Water Conservation District as a watershed coordinator. I work in private lands conservation, and that means conserving soil and cleaner water and keeping the things out of our water that wildlife doesn't like, that we don't need in our bodies, and you want to keep that sediment on your ground because you need it to grow food. So my connection to soil started when I was very young. I grew up in Davenport, Iowa, on the Mississippi River in a flood zone, and I walked my dog to the river, and I was always so angry that the water was so murky and dirty, and the transparency in the Mississippi River is very bad. And now as an adult, I know why, and it feels like an unimaginably large barrier that, how do we fix this thing? And it feels like you can't take off a piece on your own, but when you get in a large group and you put people together that care about making change, it feels a little easier, and like you're not, a solo warrior in this. So, thank you.
My name is Willem Hawley. I am Jane's third son out of four. I am a twin to my brother Bo, who's not here, but he will be in the performance. I'm a senior communications major. I am also the sound director and DJ for this performance. Hence, I have all this equipment here. It's pretty synonymous with me. And I'd say my connection to soil was also an upbringing on a remote part of rural Iowa, on Big Canoe Road at a farm. This huge dirt pile was one place we'd roll around and fight and argue and wrestle and sometimes digest on accident. But since then, it's been a part of my life through working through the street department, putting in fence posts and digging up rock in Dunning Springs. I've seen pretty fragile, brittle, and degrading soil, and I think now centering it in the middle here, it's pretty. I think it's come full circle, if that circle is almost coming to an end. But yeah, thank you.
I'm John Lupke. I've been a lifelong farmer here in Winnebago County. Also served on the Soil and Water Conservation Board for, I'm thinking 20 or 25 years, not sure the exact number of years, but I guess my start in the conservation thing was my dad, well, that was back in the day when you just planted straight back and forth across the field. And they used check wire so you could cultivate both ways to control weeds. And I remember we had a pretty big storm overnight, and we go back what the Prairie Farmer Trail is now. It's a railroad track then. That ground was rougher back in that area, and there was a lot of soil loss from that rain event. And I can remember my dad saying, "We can't keep this up." So he had contour strips laid out on the whole farm, and most of them are still in place today. And they do work, and we've done other things through the years too, have waterways and no-till and cover crops, but that thing at a young age to be exposed to that and realize there's a way to correct that had a big impact on me. So.
She has to talk loud into it.
Can you hear me now? No.
We just switched the mics. So,
Yeah, I see that.
so I guess he went. He didn't use that.
Use this one.
She just.
So it's working.
This one should be working now? Okay. So my name is Brenda Harris, and I have the great opportunity to work with Jane Hawley, and now Jodi as well. In the city of Decorah, I do acupuncture and Chinese medicine, where earth is very important to us and soil. In fact, it is the center. So here we're centering the center. And my connection to earth, or to soil, I guess, is that I am human, so I am the soil. And I grew up on a farm, in a farming community, and I grew up with a father who had a passion for soil and water, and was very specific about how we treated those things. And so I grew up with plants not only on the farm, but with gardens, and it was always just a part of life. And in my practice, I work with humans, which we have our own soil and our own bodies, which are the microcosm of the bigger earth, the soil macrocosm. So I experience regeneration and degradation every day, and I'll share more with that a little later.
Hi, my name is Kopo. I am a sophomore biology and global health major at Luther here. I'm from, can you hear me, Claudina? Okay, I'm from Liberia, and so I'm an international student at Luther. My connection to soil, I would say, would be kind of like an awakening I had in Dr. Enos' microbiology class I took last semester, and then I also took Jane's dance class. I was blessed to have both of them in a semester with me. And they just made me realize that I had something precious that I had taken for granted throughout my life. Because back home, soil is everywhere. And so I grew up playing in the dirt, and it was never really an issue. And so when I came and I saw people, I was like, what is this obsession with soil? Like, guys, chill. And so just being in both of their class, I was like, okay, you know what? I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna try to understand what is the reason behind this. And so when Dr. Enos told me, hey, there's a dance class and we're gonna be doing a performance, and I was like, you know what, I want to take a class for credit, but it's okay, I'm gonna take this instead, and whether it counts or it doesn't count, it's okay. And so just being in Jane's class and then seeing the parallels of biology, it was just like, wow, this is an issue. And I didn't realize it because I had surplus of it, I guess, and it wasn't really a big issue for me growing up. But just hearing people sharing their story about, hey, I experienced flooding and I did this and I did that, it just made me realize that, oh wow, this is an issue. And so that just sparked my interest. And so I was just in the dance class, the one biology student, like, yeah guys, I'm just here to learn, and I have no dance experience. I'm not an environmental studies major. I didn't grow up on a farm. I'm just here to figure this out. And so throughout the semester until now, I say that interests have just grown more and more, and I'm still on the journey of discovery, I would like to call it, just learn more. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Hannah Raisler. I am a junior here at Luther. I'm an allied health science major, and I'm a double minor in biology and psychology. So my connection with soil probably started when I was young. My grandmother gardens, and so I was always out in the summer helping her plant and get her garden ready. But I would say I grew up in Iowa, and so I was aware of farming issues and land issues and stuff like that. But I think being involved with Soul of Soil has really brought a different awareness for me about soil. I took my movement fundamentals class first in sophomore year with a different instructor because Jane was not here, and I just fell in love with it. And so I had got in contact with Jane, and she was like, I have a movement fundamentals class, or I have this other thing. And I was like, well, that time works better, and I didn't really read anything. So I showed up the first day, and people were asking me if I was there for the biology part or the dance part. And I was like, I'm here. And just since then, it's been such a cool experience. Just really diving into something that I wasn't comfortable with at first, and exploring something that is so scientific based in a way that was just like connecting with the earth and connecting with my body, and looking at something from a completely different viewer perspective. So, yeah.
Hello. Okay. Hi, my name's Avery. I'm a junior biology major. I'm also a performer in Soul of Soil. And I would say my connection to soil also started in childhood. I have lived in the country in Iowa for my whole life, also on a dirt road. And like, I don't know, I was like a worm kid, so I'd always go outside and like find worms in the grass, and I'd put them in this little bowl, and like we would just hang out for a while. And I always like played at this one specific tree with my friends at recess, and I feel like my connection with soil is coming back around now. Like I think it's something I'm rediscovering with participating in this project. And yeah, I'll talk more about like my intersections between science and dance a little bit later, but yeah, thank you for having me here.
Hi everyone, I'm Elise Wilson. I am a senior environmental science major, and I'm also a Soul of Soil performer. And like many of you, my connection to soil also started when I was little, when I would climb trees in my backyard barefoot, or when I would pretend to eat the soil and be a rabbit. I did that a lot. And my connection to the earth has always been here. I am studying environmental science here, and so it feels very applicable. We talk about climate issues and sustainability, so it's always kind of present in my head. And recently, Avery and I created this little brain map, and it reflects how I feel connected to the soil through both my heart. This is my heart, and this is through my feet. I think soil is grounding and also centering. So this is just going to be here behind us. And I went to Norway and studied environmental education, where children feel really connected to the soil and splashing and jumping in puddles and connecting to their inner child. So I think I've been trying to tap into that recently too.
Hi, I'm Janet Borchard. I'm a senior biology and environmental studies double major. And my connection to the soil also started when I was young. I grew up in a really small town in Iowa, surrounded by lots of farmers, both crop and livestock. And so I always could see that soil was a driving factor for the economy in Iowa when it came to agriculture. But I also had this unique experience of having parents that work in the conservation and natural resource fields. So I grew up at this kind of unique intersection where my parents were working really hard to conserve natural resources, and then I was also surrounded by so many passionate farmers, and I really saw that soil was the driving factor in that intersection, both when it came to the prairie and trees in my backyard and also the crops that were growing around me. So yeah, that's kind of how I'm connected to soil. Thank you.
I grew up on a 300-plus acre farm in Northwest Illinois, and the farm with there were 5 kids in my family. Mile-long lane from a dirt road that led into a valley, and no one could see anything that we were doing, and we were all feral. Just ran rampant, always with no shoes in the soil. Garden was humongous, and always in the creek. And so, yeah, it was just, we were embedded in it. Yeah. So that's my connection. I suppose that was why I moved into biology. And then I've always wanted to reveal the little things, the unseen, whether that be microbes, which is what I pursued, or the arts that are unseen so much in this world, or students whose qualities and assets need to be seen. So that caused me to get interested in microbiology, and that led me into soil microbes and how unseen they are. So, yeah.
Okay, as timekeeper, if you go over, right, I'm going to just do that as a consciousness. We have about 30 minutes.
I guess I'll start just kind of talking about how I think that soil should be viewed as the common good. Soil's the center for all life. Life wouldn't be possible without it. We literally would not be here without it, which is kind of crazy to think because it's just something under our feet that you might not think about. So I think, of course, if something is sustaining all life, you should center it. Why wouldn't you? And the more that comes to the center of our conversation, the center of our focus, the better we can protect and conserve something that sustains all of our life. And then as far as soil degradation goes, I lived right along a river that was flooded so many times as a child. And in 2016, I remember I would walk along the Shell Rock River as a kid, and then one day we had 4 feet of water in our basement. It had flooded dramatically, and a month later I returned and half of that bank was gone. And that was just extremely jarring, just learning that soil is not an infinite resource. Once it's gone, and that was kind of mind-blowing to me. And then coming to Luther College, learning about just how important it is, just kind of came full circle to me. So that was pretty jarring. And then I guess my role up here is just kind of as a soil researcher. I've been lucky enough to have taken a few soils classes in my time at Luther, and this fall I was able to do a semester-long research project with the Jewel family farm that's just right across 52. And it was a really, really unique experience. We were able to spend maybe 20, 30, 40 hours out there that semester testing the soil, and I was able to compare two different practices, one being organic farming that's doing a lot of tillage but is minimizing chemicals, and then the other one was no-till cover crop, and I was just able to compare which type of regenerative practice was better. And it was just a really empowering experience for me because, one, I was able to see just how important soil is. I was able to dig into it with my bare hands. I saw earthworms and insects coming out. I saw the crops coming up, and that was really awesome. And then also I was able to work with really passionate people, both in the conservation field and the farmers that had that land. And it gave me a lot of hope because I could see that regeneration of soil is happening as we speak.
Hello? Okay. So, how do I view soil as a common good? So being an allied health science major, I am very aware of body health, nutrition, food-wise, what you put into your body. And I think food is a really important thing. Obviously, it comes from the soil, and how we grow food is really important, and the ways that chemicals can affect your body and that kind of thing. I mean, obviously, like Janet was saying, it's the root of everything. We come from the soil, we return to the soil, and I think that, yeah, like that just sums that up. So how can I help members of our audience understand my felt experience? So I have been with Jane now studying soil through this arts perspective for this entire year, and our first semester was going out and doing soil research and connecting with the earth. And so part of that was we went out and collected our own soil samples, and we did it in a meditative style. So we sat with the earth and asked for permission to collect the soil, and just connecting like that in a way I hadn't before was so real and so grounding, and really started me on like a different path of self-discovery, because I think college puts you in that perspective anyways, but just bringing light to things that I wouldn't have thought about before. I didn't realize how soil degradation affected me personally, and I didn't realize how responsible I could be for changing the way that it was. So it was definitely empowering to go and connect with the earth and ask for permission and realize that like soil is not just mine to take and throw away and utilize however I want. There are consequences and impacts of that. So I thought that was really interesting. Yeah.
How do I view soil as a common good? I think it's just one of those things that bring people together regardless of your background, age, whatever. I'm just thinking about when you're affected by flood or erosion. Back home we say when the rain falls, it does not fall on one person's roof. Meaning there are natural disasters that doesn't care whether you're rich or poor, you're gonna feel the consequences. And I think soil is one of those things that whether I don't know where you're from, you just have some sort of experience to it. And so I like to see it as like this thing that brings us together. And I think us being here today is evidence of that as well. And so I think that's how I view it as a common good. It can be a tool to bring people together because we just all have experiences that links to it. As far as experiences for soil degradation, I think I did not really realize this till again, when I started Dr. Enos' class and Jane's and everything, and I started just thinking about how badly erosion is back home for some people, because we're bordered with and by the Atlantic Ocean, and so it's coming. I lived very close by the sea as a child, and when I go back home, there is a place that sea is right now. I'm like, you weren't this close. Why are you coming? And so it scares me for people who live around those areas, because what happens 50 years from now to those houses that are around there? And we're even seeing the impacts now with when it rains heavily, people's houses are being flooded. They can't leave and go outside. And I think what's funny is we think about everything as being the problem back home but soil degradation. Which now that I'm thinking about it is so funny, because people have all sorts of reasons they could come up with that the erosion or the flooding is happening, but you're taking the soil and you're not putting it back, or you're not taking care of it. And so, yeah, I would say my personal experience has just been seeing people and just waking up one morning and maybe going to use the restroom and putting my legs down and it's in a pile of water. And I look at my mom, I'm like, yep, let's go back to bed. Because the water is just pooling into the house. And that for me was my first time. This was in 2014, and this was during the Ebola epidemic back home. And so it was like, where are we going? What is happening? And so I was just like, you know what, let's just go back to bed. We're gonna deal with this later. And so just that experience is something that I don't want anyone to go through ever. And so I think that also pushes my commitment to just raising awareness on this, because no one should have to go through that. It's not nice.
Building a web here. Y'all guys great.
Boy, that was
I really like what you said. And thank you for sharing about, flooding and a memory that you had that is probably not a very good one. So scary things like that happened a lot in my hometown. I didn't grow up on a farm. I grew up in the city, very close to the Mississippi. And floods happened every few years, and some of our favorite businesses would be affected. And family members that have businesses in the downtown area, they're flooded for weeks. And you try to make light of the situation where, a restaurant deli owner is out kayaking saying, I'm open if you can get in here. But you can't get your car in the parking lot. How are you going to get here in 2 feet of water? But that's their livelihood. They have to stay open. A place that serves fresh produce raised on a farm, value-added agricultural farm, and they bring it into the city to serve you food. What a great concept. However, they're flooded for weeks on end, and they're going to lose profit. So what I think I've learned is that soil is a common good because, here, especially in Iowa and all over the Midwest, we have an infiltration issue. And that impacts our water quality and the water quantity. And that's what affects people downstream of us and the communities downstream of us as well. So the choices that you make here, where you live on your land or around you, they somewhere impact somebody in a community below you or around you. All those things are connected. So we share this common good, and even though John owns the farm now, it's his turn to own it. He didn't own it 100 years ago, and he won't own it in 100 years after he's gone. So it's not your ground, it's just your turn. So how are you going to treat that ground or that soil before, for the next generation? Do we want to keep growing food? Because 95% of our diet comes from the soil. And if we're degrading it at the rate that we are, what are we going to do to feed the nation and other nations?
Okay, can you hear me this time? Okay. So many things to say, really, but common good is, I just want to reiterate that soil is the source. And once you go to the source, when the source is gone, that's it. And so there's gentleman, Sadhguru, he's at Isha Institute, and he's done some soil research also. And he talks about timeline. And he says, when the insects go away, we have a few years left. When the worms go away, we have a few days left. When the microbes go away, we have tomorrow. So that's kind of just to put it all in perspective. There is a sense of urgency. And we can, each of us can connect to soil because we have this within ourselves. So from a health perspective, like soil is our digestive system, which is our motherboard. It's really the neurological system, and it's the system that feeds every other system. And if the system gets compromised, our health gets compromised pretty dramatically. And so what we see happening with soil degradation in the outer world, we see happening with individuals from a health perspective. So there's many examples, but just if we're talking about, earth containing water, so we've been talking about flooding, and so maybe if there's too much, there's flooding. If there's not enough, there's drought. If the soil gets too wet and there's more clay than sand, it becomes a hardness. So in the soil, it's a hardness and the water can no longer flow. In the body, it's a hardness that we call a tumor. The blood can no longer flow. If it's too dry, in the land, it becomes sand and it blows away. It loses its rooted connectedness to the oil, to the other components. In our bodies, this dryness, the separation, this inability of the water to steam up no longer nourishes the brain. We have a sandy brain and it's blowing in the wind. We can't decipher. We can't make our decisions. We have ADD, we have ADHD, we have anxiety. We have too much wind to hold down our soil. So you can see these reflections, so we can always just have ourself if we know where else to turn to harvest or take care of ourselves and our soil is also a way to help us understand the outer soil. And the arts are doing this. They bring the movement, they bring the microbial movement, they bring our awareness, and they bring our feelings. Because once it's in our body and we feel it, then we know. So thank you. I have to throw my ball.
So, Elise and I were talking before this, and we think we're just going to chat as a unit, partially because in Soul of Soil, we are a protozoa together, and so we represent one unit and one entity when we're dancing, and you will see that shortly. Yeah, do you have anything you want to specifically talk about?
Yeah, something that we talked about when we were preparing was that art movements and sort of community-based grassroots initiatives can bring everyone into the movement, no matter what you're interested in or where you're coming from. And that's something that I'm finding a lot with Soul of Soil, is that you can be a scientist or you can be an artist or a mathematician and still find your niche to connect with the soil, which will radiate change in ripples once you make that initial connection.
Yeah, it's very interconnected, and yeah, we have intertwined, intersectional, there's a lot of people up here that come from different backgrounds, but you can see that we all care about the soil, and everyone in this room, you're here because you care about learning about the soil and you have a connection to it, and we all come from different places. And something I've been thinking a lot about recently is we're working on centering the soil. A lot of times as humans, we think that it's something we build on, like it's something we stand above, but it's also something we stand beside and like within. And so kind of learning to like coexist with soil rather than like it existing to serve a purpose that is ours and not its own. That's just something I've been thinking about. Yeah. Willem?
We're building a web. Takes some work.
Okay, well, I think we were on how do you describe your work process as a dance artist. So not explicitly as a dance artist, individually I would say I'm a dance artist in my room or something, but with this role I have, I think as a person I've always thought metaphorically about things. And as an artist and working with my mom and Jodi has been, I think it's coming into fruition with that process and that mindset I have. The amount of ideas and words and eye contact we have every rehearsal speaks a tremendous amount of passion and support and knowledge about this. And I think that's the bottom line for this project, to have those three things. And so as an artist and as a musician coming into this, I think there's been a lot of upbringing with these metaphorical, philosophical questions I've been asking myself. And they've all brought me back to where my feet are. And something I've always kind of grounded myself, whether I'm in a soccer game or a cross-country race or I'm stressing out about homework, it's be where your feet are. And I thought that's always helped me. So taking in all this time I've spent with these wonderful people in Studio One and abroad, and thinking metaphorically, I think being where my feet is, being where my feet are, and thinking about soil in that sense has really been super impactful for me. And I think it's been driving my work and my creative process as a musician. So, yes.
No, why Avery was talking and also when Brenda was also speaking too, they both talked a lot about like how we see the soil as this thing, but viewing it more as standing beside it, and you described ways that it could be in us. I started thinking about, as kids, how much we play in the dirt, but how much, like playing in the soil doesn't really cause health issues. So as a child, I ate a lot of soil. I just ate it, a lot. It was like, I don't know why, I was obsessed with it. And so when I'm listening to my mom and I'm saying, oh my God, I have stomach aches, and she's like, well, you probably ate a lot of soil as a child. And then I asked her, I'm like, did you ever take me to the hospital when this was happening? She was like, yeah, and they told me nothing was wrong with you. And so I start to think, what would be the difference if I ate soil as an adult? And it will probably harm me. But as a child, it doesn't do anything to you because of that innocence, because of how connected we are to it. But as adults, we kind of deviate from that and see it as, ew, this thing. And so then, given that attitude, it's psychological in a way too as well, right? And so then you already have a preconceived notion of, this thing is gonna harm me. And so, it may or may not, placebo effect, I guess. But I was just thinking about how it is a part of us. Because if you would just think about how much you interacted with the soil as a child, and you look at even a child now, and they are playing in this, like in the soil and everything, it doesn't do anything to them. I think, if anything, it even is suggested that you expose children to the soil because it builds their immune system and everything, just going back to biology. And so it just highlights how this is part of us. It's good for us. It does nothing but benefits. And so I think if it's anything, that's just another big reason why I think it's good and we should pay attention to it.
Sorry, that's quite all right. You can move.
I want to move over here. Corpo, so I did a TEDx talk on a soil topic, which is what started a lot of this. She, as a first-year student, was my TEDx coach, my TEDx talk coach, first year. Anyway, here's a quote that what her words just, it's literally on my board right now. It's from a Norwegian philosopher. It came to us through a speaker last year. If we do not ensure that our children have a physical experience with soil, they will not develop empathy. And as I've heard these stories up here, like I am feeling that. And so I just, like I wanted to connect with this in that way. And I will also share, I'll just give a little bit of, like from a science and what I'm motivated by. Microbes have a 3 billion year head start on the rest of us. We should pay attention to what they're doing. They don't waste energy. They have perfected that. And they group together to do things that one cannot do alone. I mean, they're only a micron. One microbe doesn't really mean anything, but billions of them become a force. So I want to translate that into some of my motivations for why I'm doing this work. I don't want to waste energy. I have crossed the 50-year mark. I want the rest of my time here to matter, and I cannot come up with anything more important than this and that would have a bigger impact than this, and that's why I've centered on it. And the other piece is, we are living in a tough world here. Like, people are not getting along, and our kids are watching, and they are so disappointed in us. They don't even know what to do with us. And it makes me cry, like to see what my children experience compared to what I did. And so I am doing this for them. They are my primary motivators. They are the most tangible connection I have to the young people of the world, and so are these folks. Because this, to me, is hope. And it is the way we can connect with, it's literally our common ground. It bridges, like I am working with people that are different religions, very different political spectrums, different age, like it's the common ground. And so I see this as an avenue for regenerating the community that we have lost and a way to regain it. So that my kids can see that something can be done. And so I'm doing this soil, water, young people, period. I am now going to hand this to John Lukey, who I have watched for 20 years improve the soil on his farm in unbelievable labor, and his wife, Joan, sitting right over there, working right with him, and she deserves just as much attention, even though she didn't want to come up to the stage tonight.
I guess we all realize that you have to have soil to grow food. I think in this country we've gotten used to having, abundant food at a cheap price. Until just the last couple of years we've seen quite an increase. But for most of our lifetimes we've had adequate and cheap food. And I can't remember the guy's name that said it, but he was a real smart guy, and he said, we're only 3 days away from a revolution at any point in time. You let people go hungry for 3 days, and they get real hard to handle and manage. And I think that's a real concern and something that we need to think about and try to avoid.
Thank you. I'm the timekeeper, and we're wrapping it up here so we can open up to Q&A. But before we do that, we have a duet, protozoan, specifically the amoeba. And I also, as they get ready, I would like to have everyone involved in Soul of Soil please stand up. That's in the room. Yes. Oh, there's another one. Yes. Thank you. It's been a privilege to work with this uncommon group on this common good. Willem, are you ready?
The soil food web, by the way, they're going to show you one part of it. And you can see that you can get the rest by coming to the performance.
Predators of the plentiful bacteria, protozoans graze and digest with delight, gorging themselves on over 10,000 bacteria a day, with loads of nutrients left over. Cycling. Protozoan poop is the perfect plant fertilizer, delivering nutrients in the exact form that plants desire. Cycling.
Thank you. You're going to fall in love with microbes. And we open it up to questions, Q&A. Woo! Yes.
First of all, thank you so much. You're very impressive, and it's great to see students so involved and learning so much. And also impressive how the smell of that soil has permeated my nose. I couldn't believe how you did that. I had no idea it was that odoriferous and pleasant. My question is, for years I've always said children that play in the ground, in the dirt, are going to be healthier because they're exposed to various germs. And I was happy to hear someone allude to that. You don't have to necessarily eat the dirt, but certainly spending time in the dirt. I've always said that, too many children grow up in this sterilized environment where everything has to be clean. And I don't think it's healthy. So we have so many allergies now, I think, because of that. Is that a question or a comment? Sorry.
I'm kind of curious, at the beginning you each spoke of how you've grown to soil and attached to it and attracted to it and so on. I'm wondering, did any of you have a horse or a calf or a herbivore that eats grass? I think Robbie Jewell, Janet, maybe referred to his cattle coming out as soil makers.
This isn't maybe relevant. This was all really beautiful. But do you talk about how we can change that? I think in Iowa there's one big word I always think of, and that is ethanol. And corn is the least sustainable, as I understand it, least sustainable crop for the soil. It destroys the soil. It takes everything out and doesn't put anything back in. I'm not a scientist, so I don't know if that's accurate. But do you think about how you change that whole economic reality? It's not just farmers' attitudes and children's attitudes. It's an economic system. And maybe that's way outside of what you're working on right now. I don't know.
Yeah, our start. Just being a young person, I think we're always looking for ways to be involved in our community and to change things and make things better. I think that's one really common thing you see here with students at Luther, that we're always working for a better tomorrow, whether that be on campus or off. And I think recently my generation has realized the power of the dollar bill and how your money affects the economy and how where you spend your money affects the economy. And so choosing to buy, produce that's not corn, or choosing to buy produce that's farmed in an economically sustainable way, I think is really powerful. But I think also conversations like this, just to bring attention to it, is a great first step. I know personally, I had never really considered soil health or how I could, I'm just one person, how can I fix it? And so getting groups like this together is a really important part of the step. Yeah.
John, I'm curious about how you would answer that question if you have a thought.
She says ethanol is not sustainable. I guess I would disagree with that. If we get everybody to do no-till and cover crops or something, strip till, you got to look at the ethanol, the jobs that creates, and it's a locally grown fuel rather than having to import it from the eastern countries. The only thing you're facing with the big corporations, the seed companies, the chemical companies, they don't like to see sustainable things, and this is just me talking, but we've had experience with the cover crops and they not getting terminated on time because of, the co-op not getting out there. But so we had some yield drag from that, but it wasn't the cover crops' fault. It was a management issue, I guess I would say. So if you do the cover, I've been farming for probably 60 years. Started out my career using moldboard plow and disc and drag and all that. And then moved to a chisel plow. And so that was better. And also farmed organically for 24 years. But while I'm doing this organic thing, and it was a good thing, a good experience, but I had this fight going on in my head all the time where I'm doing tillage with the organics, and basically that's the only way you can control the weeds is with tillage. And we had part of our farm that was just too rough and too close to rock to be doing the organics on, so we went to a cover crop and no-till on that. And I can say, when I did that, the soil erosion virtually went to zero on that land. And we quit the organic, 22 was our last crop. So we farm, I guess we should say conventionally at this point in time, but we don't use anhydrous, we don't use a fungicide, we don't use an insecticide, and all those things impact the little critters you're talking about. Heard a soil scientist from Iowa State, this is probably 10, 15 years ago. That's when the fungicides were first starting to come to market. And he was talking and he said, if you use a fungicide this year, you may or you may not see a financial gain from it. But he said, I'll guarantee you that if you do use that fungicide year after year, you're going to see an impact on the fungi in the soil. And I think he was right. And the more that the chemicals you use, it just seems that you just need to use more chemicals then. I guess I'll leave it at that.
Well, if I heard a presentation in the last year where instead of corn, or corn, soy, they moved in a multiple crop rotation and they did all the economics with it. I mean, heavily, tons of data, multiple researchers involved with it. And in the year that wasn't corn, you didn't make as much money. But if you looked at the 5-year, if you did your average over the 5 years, you made as much because you weren't having to buy all the fungicides and the fertilizers, so your input costs went down. And I do think there's a greater attention towards net income versus yield. And what we're trying to do in terms of the research project is change the metric from a yield-based to a how alive is your soil based. And that has value. That has value because it will save you input costs. So if you can make an economic argument with it, so that's happening. That's happening in circles from farmers. So I do think, so it's there, but it needs to be accelerated. And so what our hope is that we can help landowners here see the life in their soil, not the chemistry, but what is the life? So that's our focus, and then that knowledge can help change the metric, and then change practice, support the practices that John is talking about. And before I leave the floor, I just want to give credit to husband John, who's quietly sitting back there, humbly, like shaking his head, oh, no, because he has taken this soil in about 10 years. He's increased the percent carbon in it. It did not used to look like that. This soil is very much alive, and that's why it smells like that. Those are the organisms are producing those compounds that we smell, and it makes us feel good. Like it feels good. And so I just want to give, this has been rotationally grazed, and those cows don't eat more than, there's still this much grass. They're moved every 12 hours. Because if you let them eat this, you just killed the plant, which is the source of the microbial food, because they deliver the food out their roots. 40% of their photosynthetic power goes out of their roots. Why? To feed the thing that is feeding that. So that's the cycle, reciprocity. Anyway, just wanted to give credit to you, oh, quiet husband sitting in the background.
I just wanted to say that one of the things that I think is interesting in listening to all of you, and also having grown up on a farm and eaten soil and played in soil, is that I think there's also a connection between small family farming, smaller farms, and community, which is some of what the students are talking about as well. We find our way back to community. So I grew up in a farm neighborhood full of farmers, small farms, and community. And so that contact with soil and smaller farms, I think, can also lead to less use of pesticides and herbicides, because they're talking to each other and there's a community around it. So when we move towards very large farms with one entity doing everything, then we move away from community. And community can help keep soil safe. So.
Ross.
So this is a two-part question, or maybe associated, think about the same thing in two different ways. But I guess you talked a lot about emotions, the way you connect with soil. One word that I didn't hear, and so this is my question, if you thought about this, is was there any discussion of soil and the emotion of fear? Because, and I think you alluded to it the best, we're not afraid of soil when we're kids. You eat it, you play in it, you're just in it, you're dirty. But as adults, suddenly it's like, it's this bad thing. You're associating dirt with, and dirt is different than soil, but still it becomes something that's bad. Almost like darkness, right? Like we fight darkness by putting lights everywhere. We think of soil as, we don't think about it as soil, we think about it as dirt, and you're dirty. And then to take it to a really dark emotion, the end of life. I just literally had this discussion with my sister, and we were talking about, I don't know why, but we were talking about this over Easter, I don't want to be buried. When I die, I don't want to be buried. And it's like this inherent fear of like being trapped underground. And I don't know, I just wondered if that came up in discussions and talking about how you connect with the soil and whether that relates back to how we then treat the soil.
Anybody want to speak to that?
Is this on? Okay. Yeah, I totally just wrote that down because that's a very interesting thought of how does soil become dirt to us? And I feel like in my own personal experience, I have felt that a little bit. I was one of those kids, like I talked about, I was in the dirt a little bit when I was a kid, and then I kind of came out of that, and now I'm diving back into it because I've been part of this project. But I don't know, it's society. That's my first answer. But it sounds really basic, but I feel like it's something that we can each unpack for ourselves. One of the things I remember hearing about that came out of the Soul of Soil from the fall was talking about how, and this kind of connects to what Brenda was talking about, like we are all made of the same things, and Elise and I talk about this a lot too, but like we're made of the soil, and like in death we will return to the soil. So like, why are we buried in a box when we could return to where we come from and like what we're made of? Yeah, so like kind of that. I think that it connects to a fear of like dying, maybe. We assume, like, we associate. Yeah. Anyone else?
So, as I said, I would garden with my grandma, but I always had gloves on. I did not touch the dirt, to be very clear. I was not that kind of child. I did not stomp in puddles. I did not play in the dirt at all. And so coming from that perspective and being thrown into, you need to go dig up the soil with your hands and put it in a jar and bring it back. Or like, we're gonna rub mud on our dirt, like mud on our body today, and it's gonna be so much fun. A lot of that has been way outside of my comfort zone, but it oftentimes brings up this inner child for me and an experience that I never tapped into as a child. And so I think personally for me, but maybe for others, when I sit and I really think about, you know, what is soil, what am I doing with the soil and my interaction with it, I feel more joy there than I do disgust. And I think, you know, as we grow, we disconnect from that part of us that plays outside and that plays period. And it just truly becomes something that's underneath our feet and that we don't think about. And so I think it might be lack of awareness rather than fear sometimes. Yeah.
I mean, I can just add to that from the Chinese medicine perspective. But first, I just wanted to add one more thing to the financial. I don't know if this is ever a possibility in the organizations, but is there any way for incentives directly to farmers to be regenerating the soil? So there's a direct financial, anyway, that's my question. But for the fear, so when our earth or our own digestion becomes weak, our kidney energy also becomes weak, which makes us fearful. So our fear comes from our own degradation of our soil. So we're experiencing that as adults. We don't have that much deficiency as a child. So if we're taking better care of our soil, we wouldn't have the same fear. But the beauty is right beside fear is motivation. So we can use that same fear to be motivated to change and start working with the soil rather than having fear for the soil.
I have a person here too that was in queue.
Oh, Hannah, as you were talking about your experience, it reminded me of the moment in practice when you had touched the soil in the soil slip scene. And to me, it looked like it was like such this sacred moment. But then I remember asking you, and you said that it felt uncomfortable, which was really interesting. But throughout my time, as I've been researching about like how are we developing relationships to the earth so that we can have a better relationship with the earth and regenerate life. I've been thinking a lot about soil accessibility and how, like here in Decorah, we have so much privilege to just go out and be alone in a forest if we want to do that. But there are so many other people who don't have soil accessibility. And what does it mean if all of those people can't interact with the earth in the way that we are interacting with it, or have the chance to interact with it? And Brenda, a lot of your comments, of your like emphasis on our bodies, our earth, have been making me wonder if it's a perspective change. If we see that humans are also earth, is that enough of a relationship to build the empathy that children need, or do we need to touch soil so that we don't have that fear, so that we can have that loving relationship. So I don't have an answer to that, but I've been thinking about that a lot.
I am going to add to that Hannah, as we coated ourselves with clay, soil slip, Hannah was the one that came up to me and did a mud handprint right on my back in fun play. And I want to tie something back to what Ross said. So when does soil become dirt? When do we lose our play? Because I also have the same question about dancing. Because children are uninhibited. And somehow maybe those shifts are related to each other. Do you want to ask the last question?
Okay. I just want to thank you for putting this together and creating this space, and especially for bridging like movement and dance and art and expression with biology. And my sister goes to a big university and studies biology at a university. So when I was talking to her about this bridge of dance and art and soil and progress, she almost had this puzzled look of, what do you mean they're together? She is used to seeing them with such this scientific separate lens, and it was a beautiful thing to kind of introduce her to bringing them together. So I guess I wanted to kind of create the opportunity to discuss how I think, specifically for Dr. Hawley and also for Dr. Enos, and ask how I guess bridging these two things together and really uniting them has kind of changed the way that you view your own, I guess, side of it. Now that you see it together, how has that changed the way that you view dance and I guess the science of it?
I'll just give a quick answer that I think science has failed in its communication because we've focused on talking to ourselves and we think we're all so, yeah, let's do this and publish where no one else reads. And Jane heard that and she said to me at lunch one day, I can help with that. And that's how Body of Water happened. And it changed, and she her work caused people to cry in a performance about what we were doing with our water. And there's no way I can do that with a PowerPoint full of really dramatic data. But I'm not going to connect with people's emotions. So science is insufficient, and I would say we're paying for it right now. We're paying for it. That's my response.
And will you repeat the question just one more time for me?
Totally fine. I was talking about how you've kind of viewed your side of it with movements, art, and dance in this project, how that's changed a little bit since bridging it together with the science of it, if that's kind of made you kind of look at your end of it a little bit differently.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. So this is the second project I've done with Jodi's passionate research. The first was Body of Water. The second is Soul of Soil. And I've always known about origins and return from the earth because I was raised on a farm and saw a lot of death. My dad wanted to be buried in the earth. So I love being on the ground. I loved purposefully having my kids have access to the ground. And now living in Decorah, I yearn to turn my grass into a wild flower prairie. And I can do that. I'm so grateful. While I've been working with these bodies of earth, I cry a lot in rehearsals. They move me, they move us, right, in ways that I was afraid. I was afraid I wasn't going to be able to do it. But with our collaboration, I can't tell you how many people are involved in this production. Right now it's over the top. And we're making it work. We're actually the food web. We're actually falling in love with what we are, where we come from, and where we will return. It is so simple. It is so simple. Thank you.
I do have a question. Water, earth, is air next?
I love the elements. Yeah, bring it on. That's a great idea. Air.
Thank you so much for coming tonight, and we'll head and we're going to have some refreshments in the next room if you care to stay and mingle. Thank you to every one of these folks on the stage.